This is Section 7 of the $30,000 Bequest and Other Stories by Mark Twain. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The $30,000 Bequest, Chapter 7. One Sunday afternoon, some time after this, they were sailing the summer seas in their dream yacht and reclining in lazy luxury under the awning of the afterdeck. There was silence, for each was busy with his own thoughts. These seasons of silence had insensibly been growing more and more frequent of late. The old nearness and cordiality were waning. Sally's terrible revelation had done its work. Aleck had tried hard to drive the memory of it out of her mind, but it would not go, and the shame and bitterness of it were poisoning her gracious dream life. She could see now, on Sundays, that her husband was becoming a bloated and repulsive thing. She could not close her eyes to this, and in these days she no longer looked at him, Sundays, when she could help it. But was she herself without blemish? Alas, she knew she was not. She was keeping a secret from him, she was acting dishonorably toward him, and many a pang it was costing her. She was breaking the compact and concealing it from him. Under strong temptations she had gone into business again. She had risked their whole fortune in a purchase of all the railway systems and coal and steel companies in the country on a margin, and she was now trembling every Sabbath hour, lest through some chance word of hers he find it out. In her misery and remorse for this treachery she could not keep her heart from going out to him in pity. She was filled with compunctions to see him lying there, drunk and content, and never suspecting, trusting her with a perfect and pathetic trust, and she holding over him by a thread a possible calamity of so devastating a— "Say, Aleck!" The interrupting words brought her suddenly to herself. She was grateful to have that persecuting subject from her thoughts, and she answered, with much of the old-time tenderness in her tone, "Yes, dear." "Do you know, Aleck, I think we are making a mistake. That is, you are. I mean, about the marriage business." He sat up, fat and groggy and benevolent, like a bronze Buddha, and grew earnest. "Consider, it's more than 5 years. You've continued the same policy from the start, with every rise always holding on for 5 points higher. Always, when I think we are going to have some weddings, you see a bigger thing ahead, and I undergo another disappointment. I think you are too hard to please. Some day we'll get left. First, we turned down the dentist and the lawyer. That was all right, it was sound. Next we turned down the banker's son and the pork butcher's heir, right again and sound. Next we turned down the congressman's son and the governor's, right as a trivet, I confess it. Next the senator's son and the son of the vice president of the United States. Perfectly right, there's no permanency about those little distinctions. Then you went for the aristocracy, and I thought we had struck oil at last. Yes. We would make a plunge at the 400 and pull in some ancient lineage, venerable, holy, ineffable, mellow with the antiquity of 150 years, disinfected of the ancestral odors of salt cod and pelts all of a century ago, and unsmirched by a day's work since, and then the marriages, of course. But no, along comes a pair of real aristocrats from Europe, and straightway you throw over the half-breeds. It was awfully discouraging, Aleck. Since then, what a procession! You turned down the baronets for a pair of barons. You turned down the barons for a pair of viscounts, the viscounts for a pair of earls, the earls for a pair of marquises, the marquises for a brace of dukes. Now, Aleck, cash in. You've played the limit. You've got a job lot of 4 dukes under the hammer, of 4 nationalities, all sound in the wind and limb and pedigree, all bankrupt and in debt up to the ears. They come high, but we can afford it. Come, Aleck, don't delay any longer. Don't keep up the suspense. Take the whole layout and leave the girls to choose." Aleck had been smiling blandly and contentedly all through this arraignment of her marriage policy. A pleasant light, as of triumph, with perhaps a nice surprise peeping out through it, rose in her eyes, and she said, as calmly as she could, "Sally, what would you say to royalty?" Prodigious! Poor man, it knocked him silly, and he fell over the garboard strake and barked his shin on the catheads. He was dizzy for a moment, then he gathered himself up and limped over and sat down by his wife and beamed his old-time admiration and affection upon her in floods out of his bleary eyes. "By George," he said, fervently, "Aleck, you are great! The greatest woman in the whole earth! I can't ever learn the whole size of you. I can't ever learn the immeasurable deeps of you. Here I've been considering myself qualified to criticize your game. I! Why, if I had stopped to think, I'd have known you had a lone hand up your sleeve. Now, dear heart, I'm all red-hot impatience. Tell me about it." The flattered and happy woman put her lips to his ear and whispered a princely name. It made him catch his breath. It lit his face with exultation. "Land," he said, "it's a stunning catch. He's got a gambling hell and a graveyard and a bishop and a cathedral all his very own, and an all gilt-edged 500% stock, every detail of it, the tidiest little property in Europe. And that graveyard, it's the selectest in the world, none but suicides admitted. Yes, sir, and the free list suspended, too, all the time. There isn't much land in the principality, but there's enough. 800 acres in the graveyard and 42 outside. It's a sovereignty, that's the main thing. Land's nothing. There's plenty land. Sahara's drugged with it." Aleck glowed. She was profoundly happy. She said, "Think of it, Sally. It is a family that has never married outside the royal and imperial houses of Europe. Our grandchildren will sit upon thrones." "True as you live, Aleck, and bear scepters, too, and handle them as naturally and nonchalantly as I handle a yardstick. It's a grand catch, Aleck. He's corralled, is he? Can't get away? You didn't take him on a margin?" "No, trust me for that. He's not a liability, he's an asset. So is the other one." "Who is it, Aleck?" "His Royal Highness Sigismund Siegfried Launfeld Dinkelspiel Schwarzenberg Blutwurst, hereditary Grand Duke of Katzenjammer." "No, you can't mean it." "It's as true as I'm sitting here, I give you my word," she answered. His cup was full, and he hugged her to his heart with rapture, saying, "How wonderful it all seems, and how beautiful! It's one of the oldest and noblest of the 364 ancient German principalities, and one of the few that was allowed to retain its royal estate when Bismarck got done trimming them. I know that farm. I've been there. It's got a rope walk and a candle factory and an army, standing army, infantry and cavalry, 3 soldiers and a horse. Aleck, it's been a long wait, and full of heartbreak and hope deferred, but God knows I am happy now, happy and grateful to you, my own, who have done it all. When is it to be?" "Next Sunday." "Good. And we'll want to do these weddings up in the very regalest style that's going. It's properly due to the royal quality of the parties of the first part. Now, as I understand it, there's only one kind of marriage that is sacred to royalty, exclusive to royalty. It's the morganatic." "What do you call it that for, Sally?" "I don't know, but anyway it's royal, and royal only." "Then we will insist upon it. More, I will compel it. It is morganatic marriage or none." "That settles it," said Sally, rubbing his hands with delight. "And it will be the very first in America. Aleck, it will make Newport sick." Then they fell silent and drifted away upon their dream wings to the far regions of the earth to invite all the crowned heads and their families and provide gratis transportation to them. End of chapter 7.